terrain, pull up, pull up.
They were minutes from landing. Miami glittered ahead in the night. 176 people sat aboard a brand new jet, trusting their crew, trusting their machines. And yet, in the final 4 minutes, no one was flying the airplane. All eyes were fixed on a single, stubborn light bulb. What followed was one of the most haunting tragedies in American aviation. This is Eastern Airlines Flight 401. It was December 29th, 1972. A Friday night, just after Christmas. Eastern Airlines Flight 401 left New York's JFK Airport around 9 p.m., bound for Miami, Florida. The aircraft, a Lockheed L-1011 TriStar, tail number N310EA, one of the most advanced planes of its day. The pride of Eastern's fleet. Wide body comfort, computer-assisted controls, and triple redundancy. On board, 163 passengers and 13 crew. Some returning home for New Year's, others heading to vacation in Florida's warmth. They were expecting an uneventful 2.5-hour journey. The crew were seasoned professionals. Captain Robert Loft, 55 with over 29,000 flight hours. First Officer Albert Stockstill, 39, a rising star with nearly 6,000 hours. And Flight Engineer Don Repo, 51, a veteran who knew the L-1011 inside and out. The cabin crew, led by Senior Flight Attendant Beverly Raposa, bustled to serve drinks and meals as the jet climbed south into the night sky. At 11:30 p.m., after a smooth flight, Flight 401 was cleared to land on Miami's runway 9 left. The crew lowered the landing gear. 2 green lights clicked on, left and right gear locked. But the third, the nose gear light, stayed dark. In the cockpit, tension rose. A missing light could mean 2 things. Either the nose gear hadn't locked, or the light bulb itself was faulty. Loft ordered the jet into a holding pattern. "Let's climb to 2,000 feet, he told ATC, circling west over the black expanse of the Florida Everglades. Inside, the crew wrestled with the light assembly. The panel was pulled out, twisted, and even reinstalled incorrectly. Neither Loft nor Stockstill considered the obvious. Both bulbs were burned out. Instead, they grew consumed by the problem, calling a maintenance specialist from the jump seat, while Repo left his station to crawl into the avionics bay below the cockpit to peer at the gear through a tiny porthole. Meanwhile, the autopilot, George, was engaged. But in shifting modes, it quietly slipped into control wheel steering, or CWS. In this state, the jet no longer held altitude firmly. Even a slight nudge of the yoke, combined with thrust adjustments, let the aircraft begin a slow, unnoticed descent. The men trusted George, but George was drifting. For the next 4 minutes, their world shrank to the size of a small green light bulb. At 11:41 p.m., the L-1011 was silently descending. From 2,000 feet to 1,500 to 1,000. The cockpit altimeter wound downward. A chime sounded at 1,750 feet, warning of altitude loss. But no one heard it. Their voices overlapped. "Try it again. Maybe the lens is jammed. Repo, you see anything?" As tools clinked in the background. Below them, nothing but black water and sawgrass. No city lights, no horizon, just the swamp, stretching endlessly in the dark. At 11:42 p.m., First Officer Stockstill suddenly noticed the altimeter. His voice cuts through the cockpit voice recorder like a gunshot. "We're still at 2,000, right? Then panic. We're at 800. Seconds later, the jet slammed into the Everglades. The sound was like thunder and glass exploding underwater. The L-1011 broke apart over half a mile, its fuselage ripping into pieces. The swamp swallowed metal, fire, and screaming souls. Out of 176 souls on board, 101 were killed instantly or succumbed to injuries. 75 survived, battered, burned, clinging to wreckage in the black swamp water. Senior flight attendant Beverly Raposa, though injured, rallied passengers, urging them to stay calm, to keep their heads above water until help arrived. And in the darkness, help was coming. Robert "Bud" Marquise, a local airboater out frog hunting, saw fire on the horizon. He rushed his airboat into the wreckage, pulling survivors into his craft. He worked tirelessly until helicopters arrived, guided only by his headlamp and the cries of the living. Survivors later credited Marquis with saving dozens of lives. He himself carried burns and injuries from the rescue, but returned again and again into the fire. The NTSB launched one of the most intensive crash investigations of the era. The conclusion was chilling in its simplicity. There was nothing wrong with the jet, except for 2 burned-out bulbs. The nose gear had been locked the entire time. The landing could have gone ahead safely. The real cause, human error. The crew had become so fixated on the indicator light that they stopped flying the airplane. None of them monitored altitude. None of them realized the autopilot had slipped into a deceptive mode. 4 minutes of blindness, and the cost was over 100 lives. The NTSB's report recommended sweeping changes: mandatory ground proximity warning systems, stronger altitude alerts, and new training emphasizing cockpit resource management, a principle every pilot now learns: fly the airplane first, troubleshoot later. But Flight 401 didn't fade quietly into the history books. Almost immediately, strange stories began to circulate. Flight attendants whispered of seeing Captain Loft in first-class cabins. Maintenance crews claimed Flight Engineer Repo appeared in galleys, assuring them everything would be all right. Always aboard other Eastern L-1011s, planes that carried salvage parts from Flight 401's wreckage. Eastern officially dismissed the rumors as nonsense. CEO Frank Borman called it garbage. But the tales grew. John G. Fuller's 1976 book, The Ghost of Flight 401, became a bestseller. An NBC movie followed in 1978. To this day, the legend lingers. Were the spirits of Loft and Repo warning future crews? Or were they just echoes born from trauma, from grief that refused to die? Eastern Airlines Flight 401 is remembered as a lesson in vigilance, a warning written in fire across the Everglades. Distraction can be deadly, but it is also remembered for its shadows. Whispers of ghosts in quiet cabins, eyes glimpsed in reflective glass. Perhaps the dead never really left that night. Perhaps they're still flying somewhere, waiting for us to press play again.